Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another Costume Designer interview. And today with me, I have Marissa Schwartz. She is the costume designer of the hit series Sterling Point, which is now on Prime. All 8 episodes are out. You can go there and binge watch it. But hopefully, if you're arriving with us right now, you've already seen this series because we're going to get into the costumes, which is one of the highlights of the show, Marissa.
Thank you so much for saying so, Heidi. I appreciate
Yeah. I was mentioning to you before we got going that I love the show. Absolutely adored it. I was really excited to see it because, of course, it takes place in our home province of Ontario, and you're in the Toronto area as I am as well. By the way, are you from Ontario originally?
I am just North Toronto, pretty
Oh,
much.
okay.
Mhm.
So anyway, before we get into the show, this is my first time meeting you, and I just wanted to get to know you a little bit better. So to start off, would you mind telling me a little bit about yourself and how you decided and why you loved getting into costume design?
Sure. I guess I could start by saying from the earliest memories, I was always drawn to like color and clothing and fabric and play and imagination. And it was such a big part of my childhood. And then when I got a little bit older, I started some extracurriculars and theater and really fell in love with that medium. And that was kind of my conduit to the arts, I would say, and really gave me like a lot of foundation in building character and story and narrative. And, coupled with a love of just fashion as I became a teenager and, self expression. Um, as I sort of like got a bit older and was moving into my like late high school years and trying to figure out what to do, um, it was like I was circling it all along, but it took a few years to kind of land in film. So I did end up going to school for fashion merchandising, and I started in sort of styling, like advertising, styling. I did a lot of assisting work. We did some commercials, and that was kind of the beginnings of me being like, "Oh, what is this? What is this craft with movement?" And I think it was sort of at that point that I realized movement, clothing and movement was something that I was very interested in exploring. And um, honestly, it took not, I wouldn't say wrong turns, but I would say like sidestepping, where I landed. I did a makeup program because I thought, oh, maybe that's like it again, it was I said earlier, finding film, like costume for film is really specific and it's not very, I think in recent years it's become more visible, but it really wasn't on my radar as a possibility. And so after doing a makeup program, which was super film focused, that was kind of when the light bulb went off. And I was like, okay, I have this other skill that really does lend itself. I wonder if that's something that I should lean into. And and then I started slowly, working in commercials and short films and, doing the indie thing. And it's just snowballed from there. And truly, I would say, like, the reason I'm a costume designer today is because my husband, who's about to walk in the door, so you might hear that, um, who I met now 15 years ago, here he comes. He saw it before I did. He was like, I think you're going to be a costume designer. You got to be a costume designer. And there he is waving, made me do his first
Tell
short.
them I say hi.
Heidi says hi.
Hi.
My husband's a filmmaker, and so we
That's
did a short film
amazing.
together. He threw me into the deep end. We did a World War II sort of like epic overnights, 5 nights in the middle of the winter, and I loved it, and I loved it. And so that was really the beginnings of me finding this career, and I haven't looked back.
That's amazing. I was going to say my husband's a video person, so he's like a techie. I think that's oftentimes what happens. You end up with a partner who shares a similar passion to you.
Totally.
Yeah, I was going to say your story sounds very familiar. A lot of designers
Yeah.
I've spoken to, they come out of styling or they come out of a different department, as you mentioned, and then they're like, oh, what's this? I didn't know I could do this for a living. This is
Yeah.
kind of interesting. But also, I love the idea that you did makeup because even if you're not doing makeup, you can work with the makeup folks and that you have that nice relationship and you have that
Totally.
understanding. Yeah.
It feels like actually an amazing understanding because the departments really rely on each other for the entirety of, dressing a body and creating a character. And so I think something that I often do, because they, makeup and hair come on board after us, is aside from just including them in all of my inspiration, like I do talk makeup and hair with them and, obviously not trying to overstep, share a lot of how I see them working together because, it can really make or break a design, the way that the makeup and hair, they can either be super cohesive or it can sort of break the vision. So I love having the shorthand and the language to
I think that your department's doing a wonderful job on that in this show. By the way, everything it looks beautifully cohesive.
we had a brilliant hair and makeup team on this.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to say before we get into the show, Sterling Point. So I was surprised that it wasn't based on an original property. Like when I sort of read or saw the trailer, I was like, oh, this must be based on a YA novel series or something. But it's not. It's a wholly original story, from my understanding, from Megan. Is that correct?
It is correct. That was like definitely one of the draws for me. It was so exciting to read the script and know it was an original story. Megan is, a brilliant filmmaker and has such an incredible way of capturing voice and dialogue and creating like depth in young people's stories, as we saw with My Old Ass and The Fallout. And it was a pretty crazy day when I got the phone call for it because it was like Megan Park, check, Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage, check, Lucky check. And I truly still pinching myself because I was like, I don't know how you got my number, but I am going to do everything in my power to get this job. And it felt really kismet.
Absolutely. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this show. So, it's a coming of age story. Which of course is one of our favorite things in like telling of young people's stories. So when you first read the scripts, what did you see as the role of costume in telling Annie's story and the other characters and helping us to understand who she is?
Yeah, I mean, when I first read it, I could see the world. It was like very clear to me from the get-go, which was one of the reasons I felt so passionate about being involved in the project. I think that there was such an opportunity to be able to showcase Canada and Muskoka, and the unique way that the style of that community just like speaks volumes and the nuance within it. So having a character like Annie who's coming from New York and she has this maturity like well beyond her years, very much so I think in the way that she dresses and sort of operates, even though there is also a lot of like insecurity and uncertainty. There was just such a great opportunity to play with that and kind of tell this fish out of water story of this girl who like lands in this place and spends a summer there and just really get a beautiful evolution as she begins and ends. And it was really, really fun to, see that story through.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that cracked me right up is when she gets on the plane and she takes
So good.
Ambien?
Ambien, yeah.
Which, I'm like, sorry, what? Like, I think it's a sedative, right? But
Yeah.
I'm just imagining my 17-year-old taking an Ambien. Because I have a 17-year-old.
Totally.
But the fact that she thought that the flight was going to be super long, that there was so many little we're like poking, like, I don't know, we're sort of teasing the US a little bit in some of the storyline there. Enjoy that so much. So speaking of that, so we have these two worlds. We have the Muskokas, which is a beautiful area of Ontario, and obviously you've been there because you were filming there. I've been there myself years ago, but also we have New York City. By the way, did you use Toronto as New York, or did you shoot in New York?
We did. Yeah, it was Toronto for New York and
Okay.
Muskoka for Muskoka.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you approach creating the two visual worlds that are, identified in this show? through costume?
Yeah. So it was important to me to do a few things with Annie and Connor and Rory, who are our characters from New York.
Hmm.
We wanted to really ground them in what made sense for their accessibility, their community, which is quite wealthy, and the fact that they're teenagers as well is just such a important aspect in terms of how they communicate, their taste, their personality, and aesthetic all through the brands they wear and the way they put it together. So, for example, Annie wears a lot of brands that are very easy to get in New York and elevated and, very polished. She's wearing like See New York jeans and tops that are like Cuckoo and Lisette and like Flore Flore, like these are her basics. A Dries Van Noten coat, like just, again, there's this feeling that she has money and she has wealth and she, is very much like the matriarch of her family. And so that was a really important tool for us. But at the same time, she had to land as a teenager. Like, I
Hmm.
think that is something that can be really tricky because while we're building two different worlds, there is a cohesion that it's all one world. And so I really drew inspiration from my own experience, growing up in the city, adjacent to quite wealthy communities, but also going up to Muskoka. Like I went up to Muskoka almost every summer. I did summer camp all in Northern Ontario. My cousin lives up in Muskoka full time. She's like what I would consider a local.
Oh, amazing.
She's the Muskoka farmer on
Yeah.
Instagram.
That's great that you have that to draw on. My
Yeah,
gosh.
so there was a lot of like real people that I looked at to help me understand how to approach these worlds and blend what is authentic for teens, which is thrifting and even with Annie, like she has all these elevated brands she wears, but it's amazing because there's these really great edits going around on TikTok breaking down her clothes. And I'll just spill a secret right now. Someone has comped a tank she wears in the first episode as the row, which we love the row, but it's actually from our dens. It's $10.
Oh my
And
gosh,
yeah.
amazing. I love
And
that.
so, and it's paired, and I think part of it is like it's paired with all these other really elevated pieces.
Mhm.
So it can land in a way that, is taken, but it's her base layer, it's her tank top. I don't think when she showed up in Muskoka, she was prepared to have to strip down to that layer, but she does inevitably, and it gets all this play. And that was very intentional because,
Mhm.
she's a teen girl, just like the rest of us or I was once. And you go into Brandy Melville and you go into Urban Outfitters and you grab the cheap and cheerful little tanks that you wear to death.
Mhm.
And then again, the reality of she's coming from this like upper class community that has a lot of access
Mhm.
to dad's credit card and more heritage brands. So it was really, really fun to play with the New York side of it. And then the Muskoka side of it, very much rooted in, people that I know and that I see. And of course, it always comes from the character and the script. Like that is the first tool in the toolbox. But what was really important to me is that them being local and coming from this other very distinctly different world didn't mean that they were like less stylish and less fashionable because nowadays the global village, we have access, we can see things, and there's just really great style all around us.
I was going to ask you, is Ardennes a Canadian company? Because I'm not sure if they're in the States as
I
well.
think they're Canadian.
Oh,
I think
okay. Yeah. So if anybody doesn't know, Ardennes is sort of
yes.
like, I don't know how you just, a lot of teens shop there.
Yeah, it's sort of, I actually don't know what
Accessories.
I don't know what yeah, it's like accessories and
Yeah.
basics, and it's
Yeah.
very,
Basics.
yeah, very, very like simple, easy to kind of
Absolutely.
come
Yeah.
by things. Yeah.
So, and affordable, accessible for young
Super
people.
affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next question I had is, so one of the things I read in your sort of descriptions is that you really wanted to have that lived in feel. You didn't want to go with those YA, like you watch some of these YA shows and everything looks almost like it's not grounded, but here you wanted to create that sort of grounded feeling to the show. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with mine and Megan's relationship to clothing and the fact that we both really see it the same way. Personally, for me, I find, and I think this is a through line in a lot of my work, that clothes that have already like lived a life, they just appear more natural on camera. And so I have always just really gravitated to things that feel worn and lived in, whether it's $3,000 or $3. Like, it's not about the price point, it's not about the brand, it's about the fact that a very crisp, very polished look. Um, the example I always give is if you see a character on TV and you can identify that they went into the mall, like the department went into the mall and, bought these pieces from all this place. And, even if they tried to wash it a couple times, like there's such a crispness and it doesn't to me ever feel like a dynamic person. It feels like a character you're being told, this is the archetype of this is the archetype of that. And it's no shade. It's really, really, really hard to actually use vintage and lived in things for so many like logistical reasons. So I would never want it to come across as though I'm like shading other YA. There's a lot of reasons people's hands are tied, and there's many, many layers of approvals to go through to sort of get to a final result. On our show, I was really blessed and lucky that the showrunners, Megan and the team at Lucky Chap and I were given, the blessing from Amazon early on to kind of do our thing. And, they really gave us a lot of freedom with the cast to unfold, the looks. And that isn't always the case. And so it was like a kind of perfect moment for me to be able to work on something of such a big scale and big story, but also just aesthetically be really, really in line with the creator of the show.
Yeah, and you also would have logistical challenges too. Say if you want to use a vintage piece, like oftentimes you need duplicates. You have to have
Totally.
multiples, right? Or so
Yeah.
that's really challenging. I've talked to some designers. They'll find a vintage piece, but then they'll have to recreate it, and then to get it to have that beaten in look. The other thing I was thinking about, of course, is that Annie, likely, I'm assuming, she is wearing some of her mom's clothes that might have been in her closet left in the cottage. So something that's been in a closet for years is obviously going to look very different than something
Totally.
like you say that just came from the mall. So
Yeah, that definitely like it was built into the story to allow us to be able to achieve that look pretty much as soon as she lands in Muskoka. So that was very lucky.
now I did read, like we're going back to the couture, that you did partner with Chanel early in production and source some of the accessories and the dress that Annie borrows from Missy Pyle, I'm assuming, after she gets thrown in the lake, which is this one here, which I have a picture of her with Megan Park behind the scenes. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that and about working with Chanel? Or did you work directly with Chanel, or did you?
We worked directly with Chanel. We were
Yeah.
really blessed that they reached out early on. They were familiar with the project and they're familiar with Lucky Chap. And so they kind of said, hey, we're interested, would you like to get on a call? And so it wasn't that I was hesitant, but I really just wanted to ensure that we weren't going for Chanel just because it's Chanel. We wanted to make sure it really fit the character. And so after some discussions with our team and Ella, we all felt that it made sense that Annie would have, some pieces from like this heritage brand, this luxury brand. And the way I understood it and chose pieces was things that her dad probably got her for graduations or her birthdays, things that she'd say, I really want to get the classic Chanel flats, which is what she wears in the first episode, or the watch that she has in the first episode as well, her sunglasses. So really it was mostly about the accessories that kind of filled out her closet as opposed to clothing pieces, which didn't feel like it landed as easily in her sort of teenage years, if that makes sense. Um, and we had a lot of fun choosing the pieces and uh, seeing what really lent itself to the character. And one of my favorite ones is the suede hobo bag that she wears throughout the show, and certainly you see it in the first few episodes. I loved it so much because um, I personally, blue suede is something I just have a penchant towards, and always had. But I thought it was quite a funny choice um, for a teen girl because it's so. I understand, like I'm drawn to it, and I time and time again I learned the lesson that suede is so hard to maintain, and
Mm-hmm.
it felt like a really um, correct choice for a teen girl. She's not going for a black leather classic bag that she's going to have for years. The brain, the frontal lobe, we're not fully developed. So
Mm-hmm.
she's choosing something that she's super excited by, and perhaps it gets beaten up along the way. But that just sort of adds to the beauty of the piece. And then in terms of the dress, so when we were talking with Chanel and going
Mm-hmm.
through all of the sort of things that would land for Annie's character, they asked us if there was any clothing. And initially I said, there is, I don't think it's going to sort of work in her wardrobe, but there is this one beat in episode 2 where she falls into a lake. She ends up at Rory's house and he brings out a dress that was his mom's. And so, I kind of gave them the brief, and they went back and sent me a few images of potential dresses to try. And as soon as I saw that, I
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, I always say that clothing speaks to me, and I have certain things sort of, it almost feels like they're illuminated and draw me in. And I just really knew that was going to be something special. So I said, you know what, send us this. We would love to try it. Let's see if it works. We had a few other things that we had pulled for the fitting when we were working on this look. But as soon as we put this on Ella's body, it was kind of like a no-brainer. We didn't try
Mm-hmm.
anything else on.
Wow.
There was no notes. Everyone was like, check, check, check. This is the one.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so exciting about when that happens is, you do a fitting, you're in your own space. I haven't been to the location. You know what's going on. You know the locations roughly, but it's not really until you show up on the day that you see how it all plays. And I remember getting a photo from our DPK2, and she was like, "Did you plan this with the location? Because it's not in this shot, but there is this great shot of Annie outside the house talking to Connor on the phone. And the whole house has that two-tone sort of white and black
Oh, yes.
motif. And so it,
Yeah.
it looked like insanely intentional, even though
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't. And then and of course, Busy Pyle, who's just this like tall goddess of a woman, it totally makes sense that a dress that was a couple seasons old would be sitting at the back of her summer closet that she doesn't like. It's so funny to me. She doesn't remember this Chanel dress that's just sitting in her closet when she sees Annie and goes, "That's a great dress." And Annie's like, "It's yours."
Yeah, and she doesn't get mad about it, which is
Well,
funny
you can
because
keep it. Like,
yeah, she's just
amazing.
like she's very generous
Yeah.
actually. Well, her
And
character is great.
oh, she's a
Yeah.
dream.
Um
So yeah, it was a really, really
yeah, you
special
had to tick a
moment.
couple of boxes then there with
Totally.
it having been hers, and also the fact that you have her, I think it's flip-flops you have her
Yeah.
wearing here, right? Which
Oh
is
yeah.
fun
I
because
mean,
that's
that's
from her
that.
original outfit.
Well, the flip flops to me were the piece that she was able to actually pull out of her own, like whether they belonged in the closet as just sorry in the
Or yes.
cottage, their summer house as like boathouse shoes, or
Sure.
it was the piece that Annie was able to salvage from her wet luggage because they're flip flops and they're manageable. I just thought it was a really, really great contrast and a good foreshadowing to what happens to Annie's character as we move through the story. To me, this is a really good indication of Annie being like 90% New York, 10% Muskoka. And then at the end of the show, it's the opposite. She
Yeah,
becomes
absolutely. She does
90%
the
Muskoka.
flip. Yeah,
10%.
but yeah, by the way, she's like the worst person. Like I was like, she put the luggage in the canoe with her and then the
Oh my
canoe
God.
dumps, which by the way, I've had that happen to me. So I know,
No way.
yeah, well, when I was a kid, I took sailing lessons and they used to force us to dump our boat, part of the sailing. So yeah, but I've dumped so many canoes. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you have to learn how to get back in and everything. So
I've done a lot of canoeing, but I've never had it fully
we were on a canoe trip. Like it was, I
okay.
think it was the Saugeen River or something. So it was very, very choppy.
Oh, okay. Oh boy.
I'm not too much of an outdoor person. So that sort of blends to
Well, I
that.
mean, I've
I'm a
been in a
bit
lot of
Annie.
canoes, but I've always opted, if I could opt out, I opted out. It was
Yeah.
not
I'm more
mine.
Annie probably than I am, say, some of the outdoor folks in the show.
Oh, same. Oh, same.
So, well, one of the things we did touch on this a little bit about the two economic backgrounds. So we have the city folk, like we're saying from New York, who, obviously, like I don't know how you describe Rory, like preppy. What would be sort of the way you would describe him?
We sort of, so like,
Here he
this
is
is a
here.
good question.
Hmm.
So Rory and Annie, and I'm not like, my pulse on the New York scene is not as, well understood as Ella, who of course is from New York.
Hmm.
So she was a really good conduit for us, but we sort of placed them in like Upper West Side, more artistic. The families are maybe not so much in, maybe they're in the finances, but like it's not like as sure. I think when you're in sort of an upper class community, prep is just a through line regardless.
Hmm.
But he's an artistic kid. Like the idea was
Yes.
like he has this sensitivity and this artistry that really came through in his wardrobe. We used a lot of Bodhi for him, which, if you know the brand, is very like bespoke, handmade, really intricate design. And that was a really good cue for us on how to sort of like see his wardrobe. We use lots of knits and, just like warmer tones to sort of convey who he was and what he gravitated towards. And
Hmm.
also, as a character, like I had these little, I always create little backstories on where they get the clothes. There's like logic that's really important to me. So it's not just, oh, they look amazing in this, let's use it. So
Sure.
one of the things was I was like, yeah, he's going to bring some of his favorite pieces from the city. But then the sweatshirt that you actually have up right now
Hmm.
is something I had this idea that before they go up to Muskoka, Missy Pyle's character, Denise, hires a personal shopper to kind of do the rounds in Toronto, do the rounds in Muskoka, and stock their closets.
Yeah.
So this sweatshirt is from a local brand called Seasonal Resident. And on the back side of it, there's this really beautiful graphic that was made the year we shot it. And it was a collab with one of the local grocery stores. And so pieces like that infusing, with his Bodhi pieces was really important. And as well, there's a really great swimwear company called Bather that's out of Toronto that we used for him quite a bit because that was, again, this idea of this personal shopper going and like doing the rounds. So the first image you just showed, he's wearing like a Bather button down. And not unlike Annie,
Oh,
or
no.
actually maybe two ago, the one, or maybe you haven't shown it yet. Maybe it was earlier.
This
The
one?
the episode, yeah, exactly. This is a bather,
Yeah.
but perfect. And so for Rory, like similar to Annie, it was important that there was like a grounded teenager element. He wore Birkenstocks, he wore Adidas, but also, his plain white tees are Balmain.
By the way, I used to have Nikes just like this when I was in high school. The white with the
Yeah,
black.
and those are a Nike Bodhi collab as well,
Oh,
which like
really? Okay.
maybe nobody will know, but
Yeah.
again, it was just like those little details to emphasize the wealth and the access to
Mhm.
create a really good contrast with our local characters was just like very intentional.
Mhm.
Mhm.
What about Connor though? I
Oh,
don't have a lot of
Connor.
pictures. So there's Connor.
Okay, Connor ended up being like a silent killer for me in terms of just like a blast working with Keen, who is just
Totally.
an amazing, amazing guy. And really, he actually went to school for fashion. So he had a lot of incredible insight. So again, like Connor, I think could have very easily gone in another direction. And it could have come across, dare I say, douchey, but
Hmm.
he has such heart
Oh
as a
yeah.
character. And so I'm really grateful that we were able to put some of the pieces, like in this image, he's wearing a chrome hearts necklace and Jacques Marie Mage glasses, which are like $1,200 a piece, like
Wow.
insane. His closet was probably the most expensive with the
Hmm.
least amount of items. And
Interesting.
and it was very important to us that, when you meet him, he's kind of obsessed with going to Ibiza with his girl. And then when he finds out about the island, he's going to sell it. Like, so there's all these things about him that really point towards like status and elevating, himself.
Hmm.
And so we wanted that to come through with his clothes, even his swimwear, which like you wouldn't know it, but he's wearing Prada swimwear.
Mm.
So the joke I had, because at one point there was a tote bag in the mix for Annie that was Marnie. And you wouldn't know it was Marnie. It was just this woven, beautiful bag. Don't think that one made it into the show, but the joke we said was like, these two are in Marnie and she's shopping for, something that's more practical and more reasonable. And he's like, what am I going to do here? I guess I'll just get a white t-shirt. And so he's wearing, all of his tees are, Marnie or his sleepwear is Margiela. Like and it was just so, so much fun. Cause he really pulled it off and he looked super cool. And we also went with really like elevated streetwear brands. So there's this one, he wears some like graphic shirts, like Amiri and Saint MX. I hope I'm saying that name right. It's like MXXXXXXX.
Hmm.
And they just had some really incredible graphics that felt so city to me. But
Hmm.
then I had there was like foils for every character. So the foil for him was Una because she wears some really interesting graphics as well. And
Hmm.
there's like some similar motifs there. And yeah, I had a lot of fun just kind of like doing things that maybe don't show up in a very visible way on screen, but created like layers of depth underneath that myself and the actors knew. And hopefully it brought, elements to their performance and to who they are as characters that,
But
fuel
by the way,
it.
is it true that this is Keen's first like acting gig?
Not his first acting
Okay, because
gig,
you said
but
he has a fashion design background in
yeah,
training.
he
Oh,
had
that's
gone to
interesting.
school
Wow.
for design, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
He had acted before. It wasn't his first, but I think he was more of a newcomer than some of our other actors on the show.
One of the things, by the way, I was going to say about Rory that I loved, it kind of reminded me, in Stranger Things, like was it Joe Keery in Stranger Things? I forgot his
Mhm.
character.
Yeah.
Steve. I love that they went against type. Like
Oh,
normally in a threesome, sorry, not a threesome, wrong
yeah,
choice
yeah.
of words,
The
a
love
love
triangle.
triangle.
Yeah. Incredible.
Sorry, that was
No worries.
inappropriate. In a love triangle, the third, usually, like especially in an '80s rom com or something, the guy would be a total jerk, right? So I
Yeah.
love that they
It was an
didn't go
easy
that way.
decision. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I really thought Connor was like wonderful comic relief for some of the more stressful moments in the show. Just sorry, that has nothing to do with the costumes. I just wanted to share my thoughts with you on that.
Totally. And I think you hit the nail on the head. And we knew that Daniel brought such beauty and sensitivity to the
Hmm.
performance,
Hmm.
but we all, I think when we were shooting it, we're like, it's Steph Ellis, people are going to go nuts. Like we're not, we know people are going to land with it. And I got a text the other day from my ACD who was like, crazy turn of events that everyone loves Rory. Like what a shock.
Yeah, they're
Because
probably shipping them. Like how the kids ship everybody.
yes, I do.
I didn't know what that meant until a few years ago, and someone had to explain it to me. So
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
good, and I think you're right. It's just a really beautiful, again, it shows like the layer of depth that Megan has in storytelling because
yeah, everything isn't
life is
always cut
never
and
that
dry like
easy.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. All right. So we did talk a little bit about the vintage pieces. Like, so where did you source some of your vintage pieces? Do you
Good
have your
question.
little haunts that you like to go to? Did you shop online? Like, how did you go about that?
A
Finding
little
some.
bit of everything. So I can shout out a couple of places that I
Sure. I can
personally,
put links in below
okay.
if you want me to share that.
So I had two incredible buyers who were always scanning all the places. But when I was lucky enough to get out and about, I would joke that they'd like let me out of my cage and like don't, you know what I mean? It's like give me the credit card, I'm going.
Yes.
A lot of Annie's pieces came from a store called Smoking Vintage in Toronto.
Oh,
Um,
amazing. Is it in Kensington?
it's not. It's actually in the like Junction area.
Oh, yeah.
And this wonderful gal named Alex runs it. She just understands what women want to wear.
Hmm.
Every time I go in there, I'm like, you know what we want to wear because there is such a nice medium of femininity and functionality. She like carries a lot of Miu Miu and Prada, which like, if we know Miuccia Prada as a designer, she's
Hmm.
very much led the way in terms of like feminist dressing in
Hmm.
the last 20 years, 30 years. I'm like can't do math right now. But I got a lot of Annie's pieces there and a lot of them off her $30 rack, which
Wow.
like I'm very much people on my team joke that in an office I either love a $3,000 or a $3 piece.
Hmm.
And that's like really who I am as a designer is it's really not about the price. Like I just love clothes and I love things that tell good stories. And so Smoking Vintage was an incredible resource. And then in Muskoka, there is a beautifully curated uh, vintage store called Clutter Porch that I would go to, and it was like hitting a jackpot. Um, and that is definitely a place to check out if you're up in Muskoka because she has just some really, really cool vintage tees and denim and reworked pieces. And I got that sweatshirt PMS that Una wears in episode 6 that I fell
Is
in
this
love
one?
with. Let's see.
Is it this one?
Yep.
Oh, amazing.
I found that there and I was like, must get it. Don't know if I will be allowed to put this on camera. And surprisingly, it was not an issue and everybody loved it. It's just
That's
so
so
great.
awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, vintage has always been like a really big part of my own experience and journey in learning my own personal taste. And so it was just really fun to like infuse as much as I could in the show.
I also wanted to ask you, so because you didn't shoot in New York, but you're representing New York, and
Yeah.
then you shot in Toronto and Muskoka, but then you also have Una, who is a British character.
Yes.
So did you try to source Canadian designers or include any kind of aside from the vintage and also or British designers for any of your
Yeah,
characters?
so in terms of the Canadian designers, I mentioned Bather earlier that we used
Yeah.
for Rory. There's also a brand called Minnow Swim, which Ramona wears some of their swim
Oh, I
tops.
think I'm familiar with them. Yes.
Yeah, they do fantastic work. Um, and for me, less about Canadian brands and more about shopping local.
Hmm.
And we shop local, like really, aside from, the few online, online shopping we had to do to get some of the New York stuff in. We did our best to really like populate our world out of the resources that we have here in the city, which was very important to me because I think that Toronto is an incredibly artistic, beautiful place. And it was very exciting to highlight not just the landscape, but like just the talent that we have here,
Hmm.
and not feel like we had to run to the mall, the big box global stores, and
So you didn't go to the Eaton Center?
I have not been to the Eaton Center in a long time.
I don't even know
Um,
if it's called that anymore, by the way.
no, it is. It is.
It is still called the Eaton
Yeah,
Center.
I
Okay.
mean, listen, like we shot for 6 months. There was a lot of people to dress. I'm
Yes.
not going to pretend that the mall was not a resource we used, but
Hmm.
I will say, and you mentioned this earlier about like designers saying how sometimes you have to recreate vintage for multiples. Like very early on, it was something I was super concerned about. And so when we started our fittings and I discovered things that were easy to duplicate were not landing, my
Mm-hmm.
team was incredible in encouraging me to like release that as a boundary, get the best look, and we are going to figure it out. And I am so grateful to them because they actually really taught me that isn't something I have to be beholden to. And um, almost, I mean, we needed stunt doubles for everything because all the boating, like it doesn't look
Oh,
like a stunt heavy
yes.
show, but
I can imagine.
whenever they're swimming, whenever they're jumping off a cliff, whenever they're driving, like we needed to dress stunt doubles. So we had to recreate everything. And I had an amazing team that helped me pull it off. So
That's so great.
it
But
was really
also, if
cool.
it's not the hero item, it probably
Yeah.
doesn't have to be as perfect. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I think it's something that as like an ADHD perfectionist, I have to learn to release because whenever I'm putting somebody forward, I want you to be able to zoom in. Like I always say,
Yeah.
I'm a 360 designer. Like I don't want to tell the director like, "Ooh, there's something weird going on the side, so just try to avoid that angle." Like I
Hmm.
really want everything to be as 100% as it can be, but at the same time, now watching the show back, it's been amazing to be like, you know what, I can release myself a little bit from that perfection because you really, don't notice. The whole point is you're not supposed to notice the stunt doubles, so
Absolutely. And I
they're
didn't. I didn't.
so good.
Success.
But I'll touch on Una for a second
Sure.
because
Yes. Let's
what
talk
I'll
about
what
her.
I'll say about Una is like her character is one that has been sort of dragged around the globe by her
Hmm.
mom. So rather than trying to like place her, you know, from the UK or from Muskoka, we wanted her to feel a bit more collected. And as though like a lot of her necklace stacks, there are things that if you look closely, feel like they could have come from her travels around the world.
For sure.
So she was a bit more of our like eclectic, eccentric character.
Hmm.
Certainly had been in Muskoka for several years, if not longer, and had really started to, embrace that lifestyle, shall we say. But I didn't try to glean too much from the fact that she had an accent. That was just more by virtue of where she spent the most time with her mom.
Sure. And I did sort of like, there's one moment where she is going through the closet trying to find something to wear for her date, for instance. And I was like, I thought, oh, maybe some of her mom's pieces might even be in there, like just
Yeah.
from. By the way, like this is just my opinion, but do you feel that that's child abandonment? Like I was said to my husband, I think that's pretty much against the law.
These
What's going?
kids, like
Yeah.
the parents aren't parenting
No, no,
very
no.
well in
Yeah,
this
the kids are
show.
not all right.
No, they're not all right, and they're
Yeah.
so young, and
Yeah.
it was really like I'm a mom to two young kids, so it was actually really emotional. Like I
Hmm.
for the first time probably ever really related weirdly to the adults and felt like really hard done by the adults in the
Hmm.
show because that was the lens I was coming from. So it was interesting. They totally abandoned their kids and I was pissed.
Yeah, I mean, my son was saying this is oftentimes a trope that it's sort of a device that has to be done, like in Harry Potter, for instance. So you
Sure.
have to isolate the children in order for these
Yeah,
stories to kind of evolve. So I mean, we have to give that a little bit. But
of course.
Una's character of the mall, I felt was like this is terrible, especially with
Yeah.
her younger sister.
Yeah, you
Um,
really feel for Una and you
oh,
kind of
absolutely.
understand. It was an
Yeah,
interesting the way they role reverse where
yeah.
uh
Here she is here.
Maple, sorry. It's confusing because her real name
Her
is
real name is
Maple.
Mabel. I know I saw
Right.
that, but her character is Maple, which is a
But
wonderful
Maple,
Canadian name, by the way.
oh, I know. So Maple really was so much, she was way ahead of her years in terms of maturity. She's like
Hmm.
clearly been seeing such immature behavior by the two older women in her life, and Una is just doing her best, but
Hmm.
really trying to capture probably probably before Maple was old enough to exist in this personality type. That was Una's role, and so now she's like trying to take back as much as she can. um, Bo just also is so incredible. I mean, the actors in this show were they were a dream to work with. And
Absolutely. And they're all in their 20s and in real life, right? Like,
yeah,
so they're
yeah,
playing
their
teens, but
early
they do a
20s.
great job. They do, like, I was actually shocked that Daniel, who plays Rory, was actually, I think he's 23. I was shocked because he looks
Yeah,
17, in my
yeah,
opinion, because I have a
I
17-year
agree.
old.
I agree.
Oh, before we move on, just one more question. Do we want to talk about Ramona a little bit?
Oh,
Wonderful
Amelie, my
character.
dear Amelie, she's the heart of the show. Like,
Hmm.
if Annie is the driver, right? She's the engine.
Hmm.
And first of all, just got along with, I mean, everybody loved them all.
Yeah.
As my grandfather said, he had this amazing quote, one is better than the next. They're just all so fantastic. But Amelie and I really connected like very early on. I think that what was nice about her character was that it was a really clear vision that was very sustained throughout the show. She doesn't have much of a journey stylistically because she's as she is, as her grandfather notes in the letter that she reads back, she's always been who she is. And so her having an understanding of herself was really, really important from the very beginning to the very end. And once we sort of honed in on her look and the pieces that made sense for her, it was just
Hmm.
very, very seamless with Amelie. And what I loved too, and I will say just to touch on the fact that she is a gay character
Yes.
and a young woman,
Hmm.
um, I really, for me, drew inspiration from the people in my life who are gay and what they look like and how they move in the world. And that was very important to me, was not to create queer characters that were queer characters and like throw it in your face. It was something that we wanted to do subtly and let that aspect of who they are be just through the story and not through the visual lens, that quick visual lens.
Yeah.
And I think you know, I felt very excited because um, somebody I've grown up with. I've actually known her since she was a baby. And now she's getting married to her lovely fiance, soon to be wife this year. I had seen them when I was filming, and I was telling them about the show and this beautiful sapphic love story, and they were so excited. And then just a few days ago, or shortly after the show came out, she wrote me this really, really beautiful message about how seen she felt and how well we did, and then, you know, added a couple TikToks in there of people commenting on the dressing. That just it to me, it makes the job so worth it to know that
Hmm.
people are seeing themselves yeah, through these characters. So
By the
Ramona,
way, it's shocking that how many of the folks in this show are international and you wouldn't
I
maybe
know.
know it, right?
Yeah,
So, because
yeah.
Amelie, she's actually, is she
Well,
British?
she's American,
German?
but she's lived in Germany for
Oh,
many
Germany. Okay,
years. So,
yes.
but she's American.
Oh, she's American.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think she was born in the States and
Yeah.
then raised in Germany. Like, she spent a lot of time there, essentially.
Yeah, no, sorry. I'm realizing I didn't even get to Ellis.
Sweet Jacob.
Or,
Yes.
yeah, Jacob. So who is Canadian?
Our Canadian boy from
Yes.
Quebec,
And he's Indigenous as well.
Indigenous as
Yeah,
well.
which is
Um,
wonderful.
yeah, I mean, oh gosh, that face, those eyes, the smile. He's such a sweetheart. He's so lovely. Um, Also, it was
Guys here
like,
too.
he just was somebody that I've grown up seeing every summer. Like, the character Ellis was so clearly defined to me. And I was really glad me and Megan fought for what he wears the first time Annie meets him. He's wearing this, I think it's a mech blue fleece where
When
he's
he picks her up in the plane,
yeah.
which by
And
the
I
way, that scene is hilarious.
It's so good. And you know, I think, but it's actually kind of interesting because when it came to like character notes, because he was sort of like the love interest, that was one where generationally you could tell what the different people on our producing team thought was the right thing versus me and Megan really fighting for like the Gen Z contingent,
Yeah.
and the accuracy as well. It was like that thing. And everybody, again, it was like such a beautiful team because people maybe would express something, but like let us make the call, which was again like quite rare. So we fought really hard for that blue fleece because I was like, this is the guy. Like, I
Well,
know
I
this.
knew it right away. I knew it right away. I'm
Yeah.
like, handsome young man coming to fly you off to a foreign, to a place you've never been before. It just seemed to me, it seemed,
Mhm.
um, you know,
And there's like a coziness and a safety and
yeah.
a,
But
you
also,
know,
he's so accomplished, a young man who already has his
who
piloting
complies like
license.
crazy. Crazy. Again, it's like, you're young. Should you really be doing this job?
I know. I want to
Um,
just ask you one more question,
sure.
though, because I don't want to keep you much longer. Sorry, we're just having such a wonderful
Okay, I could
conversation.
chat for forever. I'm such a
Yeah, I
chatty
know. I'm
person,
having
but
such a great time
yeah,
chatting with you about this. But I just wanted to ask you
sure.
about the use of your graphic tees in the
Yeah.
show. So that was a really important thing, and I know there's a lot throughout the show. And it was funny because I interviewed the designer from The Boys, and he was telling me about all the challenges with graphic tees and having to get them approved and everything. So, do you want to tell me a little bit about that, and then I'll ask you my final question.
Yeah, this is like, I think, a good little insider scoop when it comes to our department that people who don't work in this industry or even in our department would have no
Mhm.
idea is a massive part of the job. And truth be told, this whole week I've been back and forth with the producer and our clearance coordinator all about graphics on this movie that I'm doing. So essentially, we can all love something that's a graphic that we find, that we fit, that we all think is the perfect piece. And then it still needs to be approved by a legal team who's advising the network on whether or not there will be a ramification from the brand, from the artist. They want to get permission to use everything. And this is another thing, just to kind of jump back when it's like we talk about polished YA, it's sometimes you're just moving so fast and you actually don't have time to go through the process that is behind the scenes to get the approval to do the thing and to set your team up for success. You just want to make sure you have things ready to put on camera. So I just want to say that again, because like I do think um, there was a very unique team on this show that allowed for a lot of this work to happen, which is once we found a graphic that we loved, we would put it forward to the clearance coordinator who would then fight really hard for us and do the legwork to find the owner and who had the copyright and see if we could get them to sign off. And all of that is happening from the time we fit a piece to before it has to go on camera. And if you know the speed of TV, it's just like he's so fast.
Hmm.
So we got very lucky with a lot of graphics, and they did an incredible job. And there was one that both Ella and I like fell in love with. It was the white. She's wearing a white tee with a print of seagulls flying in this beautiful landscape. It's like really soft and faded. She comes home after sleeping with Rory in episode 5.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And at the beginning of episode 6, she's feeling really rough and she comes in guns a-blazing. And then when we see her later, she's like put on this cozy t-shirt. She's kind of looking at herself in the mirror. And we really wanted her to wear something that felt like it was her mom's.
Mhm.
And again, it's like sometimes you just want to have something visually that is giving some insight into internally what's going on, because they're not saying anything and you are relying so much on performance. And so sometimes just like a beautiful visual in that mix is a really good tool and visual language. And so when we tried it on, we fell in love with it. And what's amazing about this particular shirt is she wears it, she sleeps in it, and then she has to go see her dad later that day. And so she puts on this skirt, she puts on her boots that she brought from New York, and she shows up. And this is like very much a moment where we see this like contrast of somebody who's being pulled towards this life in Muskoka
Hmm.
and trying to perform this person that she came as, to show up to have dinner with her dad. And I think there's like quite a bit of inner turmoil. And so, yeah, the look just was something we were very excited by. But of course, it's a graphic and we need to get the permission to use it. And so I don't remember exactly the timing, but I remember it was very close to when we needed to put this shirt on camera, that the clearance coordinator came back to us and said, well, we found the owner. It was an artist, and that artist has since passed.
Oh,
And so we reached out to the estate, the family of the artist, and gave them the spiel and asked them if we could use it and maybe we could pay the licensing fee, whatever. And they said the condition of using it was that they got the shirt back at the end.
that's amazing.
And to me,
Wow.
it's like I truly get chills when I tell that story.
Who are you allowed to tell me who the artist is?
You know what? I don't know off the top of my
Oh,
head.
okay.
Like, this is one of those details that
Yeah.
I'm
But
like,
what year was it from? Like, was it from the 80s?
I believe it's from like the 80s or 90s. Like
Wow.
that's where I would place it.
What an amazing
So,
story.
great story.
Yeah. All right, Marissa, before we sort of wrap up here, are you able to tell me if you're working on anything new? Have you got any upcoming projects?
Yes, I'm working on a very exciting feature film. I can't say exactly what it is, but I can tell you that it's set in 2015 in Toronto. And so there's a lot of really, really great costume work that we are doing, and that is revealing itself to myself and my team. A lot of fun.
What, are you getting to work with the same team that you worked on Sterling Point with?
No, it's a different team.
Oh, it is. Okay.
It's a different union. So
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. Well, maybe when it's done, you'll come back and talk to me about it.
would love to.
Okay. But I have one final question, and that is might there be a season 2 of Sterling Point?
We're all crossing our fingers. I have no official word, but I'm really putting like all the good juju and manifesting powers towards it.
Yeah, because I do wonder,
special.
would they do a new set of characters, or would we come back to these characters? So I do wonder what they might do. Like if it might be like a White Lotus and we might just have a new set of characters, or so that's very exciting. Well, we'll have to keep our fingers crossed. But I just want to congratulate you so much on Sterling Point. It's such a fabulous show. One thing that's wonderful, I think, is that not only will young people love it, but I think it'll be enjoyable for folks my age. Middle-aged folks. I think seniors would also enjoy it. So it's not necessarily just for young folks.
Yeah, I think it definitely it will surprise people. And that's been the feedback, amongst my family and friends.
Of course, because we've got Jeffrey Dean Morgan who's in it as well. There's something for everyone.
A lot of the dudes in my life that I don't think would normally tune into like YA romance, so to speak, have done it, because they're my friends and they want to support, and they're all coming back like, it's really good.
Yeah, and Jada Plass is in it as well. So it's the adult, and Missy Pyle. The adult cast is wonderful as well, even if the focus is on the young people. So anyway, all 8 episodes are on Amazon Prime right now. You can go binge the whole thing if you haven't seen it already. Highly recommend it. A wonderful summer watch too, right? Because it takes place and it takes place in our wonderful country of Canada. So it's always nice to showcase that to the rest of the world. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and stay tuned for another costume designer interview. We'll see you again soon. Bye.
Thanks, Heidi.
Bye, Marissa.